She had grown so large in the last few minutes that a bit afraid of interrupting him. "I'll give him sixpence. I don't believe there's an atom of—" The jury all wrote down in their slates, "She doesn't believe there's an atom of meaning in it." Attempted to explain the paper. "If there's no meaning in it, that saves a world of trouble, you know, as we needn't try to find any. And yet I don't know," spreading out the verses on his knees and looking at them with one eye. "I seem to swim them, after all. Said I could not swim. You can't swim, can you?" added, turning to the knave. The knave shook his head sadly. "Do I look like—" Which he certainly did not, being made entirely of cardboard. "All right," said the king, and he went on muttering over the verses to himself. "We know it to be true, of course. I gave her one, they gave him two. That must with the tarts, you know. But it goes on, they all returned from him to you." "Why, there you are," said the king triumphantly, pointing to the tarts at the table. "Nothing can be—" Then again, before she had this fit, "You never had think," he said to the queen. "Never," said the queen furiously, throwing an ink standard as she spoke. The unfortunate little Bill had left off writing on his slate with, as he found it made no mark, but he now hastily began again, using the ink on his face as long as it lasted. "Then the words don't fit you," said the king around the court with a smile. There was a dead silence. "It's a pun!" in an angry tone, and everyone laughed. "Let the jury consider their verdict," for about the 20th time that day. "No, no," said the queen. "Sent verdict afterwards." "Stuff and nonsense," said Alice loudly. "The sentence first." "Hold your tongue," said the queen, turning purple. "I was off with her head," the queen shouted at the top of her voice. Nobody moved. "Who cares for you?" said Alice. She had grown to her full size by this. "Nothing but a pack of cards." At this, the whole pack rose up into the air and down upon her. She gave a little scream, half of fright and half of anger, and tried to beat herself, lying on the bank with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some that fluttered down from the trees into her face. "Wake up, Alice, dear," said her sister. "What a long sleep you've had." "Oh, I've had such a curious dream," said Alice, her sister, as well as she could remember them, "all these strange adventures of hers that you have jotted out." And when she had finished, her sister kissed her and said, "It was a curious dream, dear, certainly. To your tea, it's getting late." So Alice got up and ran off, thinking, as well she might, what a wonderful dream it had been. But her sister sat just as she left her, leaning her head on her hand, watching the setting sun and thinking of little wonderful adventures, till she too began dreaming after a fashion, and this was her dream. She dreamed of little Alice herself. Once again the tiny hands were clasped upon her knee, her eyes were looking up into hers. She could hear the very tones of her voice, and a little toss of her head to keep back the wandering hair that would always get into her eyes. When she listened, or seemed to listen, the whole place became alive, strange creatures of her little sister's dream. The long grass rustled at her feet as the way. The frightened mouse splashed his way through the neighboring pool, and she could hear the rattle of Mark Hare and his friends shared their never-ending meal, and the shrill voice of the queen ordering her unfortunate guests to execution. Once more the pig baby was sneezing on while plates and dishes crashed around it. Once more the shrieks of the griffin, the squeaks of slate pencil, and the choking of the suppressed guinea pigs filled the air, mixed up with the distant sob of the miserable mock turtle. So she with closed eyes and half believed herself in Wonderland, but she knew she had but done, and all would change to dull reality. The grass would only be rustling in the wind, the pool running to the waving of the reeds, and teacups would change to tinkling sheep bells, and the queen's shrill cries, the shepherd boy, and the sneeze of the baby, the shriek of the griffin, and the other would change, she knew, to the confused clamor of the busy farmyard, while the lowing of the cattle in the distance would take the place of the mock turtle's heavy sobs. She pictured to herself how this same little sister of hers would, in the after-time, be her own woman, and how she would keep, through all her riper years, the simple childhood, and how she would gather about her other little children, their eyes bright and eager with many a strange tale, perhaps even with the dream of Wonderland, and how she would feel with all their simple sorrows, and find a pleasure in all their remembering her own child life and the happy summer days. That is the Adventures in Wonderland. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream and reach the end of the book, and I will start Through the Looking Glass week on Tuesday, 2 o'clock.